I'm using the book The Very Hungry Caterpillar today. This is a good one for kindergarten through 2nd grade. I'm not going to read the whole book to you today, but I am going to post in the comments a video of the author Eric Carle reading the entire book. So make sure you click on that after you listen to my pointers for how to talk with your student about the book. What I want to talk to you about is how to teach your student to think differently about reading nonfiction or reading fiction, and some questions they can ask themselves, and give you some questions that you can ask them as well. So when you're reading nonfiction, you should encourage your child to talk like an expert. Ask them questions like, what would a scientist call this? Or tell them to try to use an expert word. Or when they do that, then you should compliment them and be very specific and say, wow, you used this word and you really sounded like an expert when you were talking about this. When they read fiction, they should talk like the character. And sometimes in kindergarten and 1st grade, students pick books that they can't actually read all of the words, and that's okay, because they can use the illustrations to help them talk like the character. So they can look at the illustration and think, well, what might the character be saying? Or what is something that the character is doing, and can I say what the character is doing? And when they do that, they should try to say it into a sentence that would sound like it would go on that page. And then you should compliment them. Wow, you said the character said this, you said the character did this, and you were talking like the character. Okay, so here are just a few pages to point out areas where you could get your child to talk like an expert, or where you could ask them to think like the character. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up, and pop, out of the egg came a tiny and very hungry caterpillar. So I would stop here and tell your child, can you think of a word that an expert would use to talk about when the caterpillar came out of the egg? Try to sound like a scientist. Thinking of the word hatch, I think a scientist would use the word hatch. And if they come up with a word like that, or maybe another word that makes sense, compliment them on that. And then I keep going. Now this is where the fiction part really starts to come in. The caterpillar starts to eat through all these different kinds of foods. And when I get to this page, wow, I know a caterpillar wouldn't really eat through all of these different foods. And so this part is very fictional. And I would ask my child, can you think like the character or talk like the character? What would the character be doing, or the caterpillar be doing, after he ate through all of these foods? Or what would he be saying after he ate through all of these foods? Can you tell that to me in a sentence, and then compliment them? And then the last part that I would ask them about is here, where it says, he built a small house called a cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks. Then he nibbled a hole in the cocoon, pushed his way out, and he was a beautiful butterfly. So I would go back here and say, wow, I noticed that the author used a word that sounded like an expert here, or sounded like a scientist. Did you notice the word? And I'm thinking of the word cocoon. And then I would say, well, what does the word cocoon really mean? How did the author say it? And the author told me that it was like a small house for the caterpillar. So that would be another chance for your child to talk like an expert about this book. This book it's fictional, but it's talking about something that really happens to caterpillars. They go from caterpillars into a cocoon and become a butterfly. So it's a great book for a conversation about what that process is like.